Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. Now to my open. It's real simple. You don't like America? You want to cheer as the World Trade Center comes down? You want to meet with a known suicide bomber? Okay, then you've given up your rights at the altar of American freedom. If there's a terror investigation on any level, you lose your right to fly, your right to buy a gun, and your right to privacy. Any rights you had take a back seat to our national security. If you're on a no-fly list, a terror watch list, if you're under terror investigation, you have no Second Amendment rights. You cannot buy a gun. You cannot fly on a plane, period. We can't allow you to do this to us again, and we will not allow you to use our Constitution as a shield while you put our loved ones, our neighbors, and our nation in danger or worse. All right, folks, our government is simply not doing enough with the information that it has. Federal agencies don't always share information with local law enforcement unless there's a joint terrorist task force. And even then, agency competition and all that goes with it hurts the investigations. Laws must be changed. We saw it when the FBI investigated the Boston bombers and were too blind to connect the dots where Homeland Security simply allowed Tamerlan Tsarnaev to fly back and forth to Chechnya. That same FBI interviewed Mateen, the Orlando shooter, 3 times. Mateen told them that his anti-American comments were simply a response to what he perceived as anti-Muslim comments. He was turning the tables on us folks while basically tapping into our politically correct Islamophobic guilt. Part of the reason for closing his case was that Mateen was a security guard, so he must be okay. Seriously? I've always been a fan of Jim Comey's. You know that. But I couldn't believe it when I heard this one.
I don't see anything in reviewing our work that our agents should have done differently.
I don't want to hear there's nothing the FBI could have done differently, especially when you keep telling us there are more terror attacks coming. You just sit back and say, we couldn't stop it? Jim, come up with some ideas, like matching a no-fly list, a terror watch list, with the purchase of a gun. How tough is that? We don't want to hear this nonsense that to do so might alert a terrorist and harm an investigation. Hell, the FBI visited Mateen 3 times. You don't think he knew he was being watched? And pray tell, why does the FBI even remove people from a terror watch list? If there's no probable cause to make a criminal case, then don't arrest the guy. But don't use our freedoms as a rationalization to free people up who want to kill us and take them off the list. So you don't have probable cause to charge them with a crime. So that doesn't mean you can't keep them on a watch list based on reasonable suspicion, a lesser standard of proof. Hell, the NSA's got all our metadata, and they know everything about the rest of us. Why can't you have a list? And from what I hear, most people who should be off the list can't get off it. And you want to take this guy off yourself? You're not locking him up. You're not convicting them of a crime. You're not jailing them. You're simply stopping them from buying a gun. And what's with this nonsense that words like Sharia and jihad are scrubbed from the FBI's lexicon and intelligence reports? You guys are so hogtied and so wimped out, you don't have the ability to even think logically anymore. Jim, you're the head of the FBI. It is not impossible. Jim, you are J. Edgar Hoover. You know how to make them pass a law. And if a judge wants to let them fly somewhere, then you know what? Make them pay for a U.S. Marshal to accompany them. Search them, and then search them again. Do a colonic if you have to. And for the rest of us, I've told you this before. I told you this after San Bernardino. Take a look. Get a gun. Buy one legally, learn how to shoot it, and be primed to use it. And I don't care if you get a long gun, a handgun, a revolver, a semi-automatic, get whatever gun you can handle. And don't let anyone talk you out of it. The Second Amendment to the Constitution and the United States Supreme Court confirm your right to have one. I'm telling you this again. Get a gun. Because this government ain't in a position to help. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page or Twitter, hashtag Judge Jeanine. Joining me now by phone, former Assistant Director of the FBI and my friend James Kallstrom. All right, Jim, let's talk about Jim Comey. All right, we're both big fans of him, both work with him, both love him. All right. You want to tell me why Jim Comey was against this allowing them to buy a gun when, or was in favor of allowing them to buy a gun for fear that it would blow up the investigation? What is he thinking?
You know, I don't know. It's hard to explain some of this. All I can tell you is that I've been contacted recently by a great number of agents that are working this stuff right now, and they tell me that this politically correct blanket is getting heavier and heavier and heavier, that I wouldn't recognize the Attorney General guidelines anymore, and that really the Muslims have been sort of corralled off as special privileges where the FBI really can't go there, can't do things.
Okay, let me ask you this.
The reason that was closed is that's what the guidelines probably say.
What guidelines? Let me ask you this, Jim. I keep hearing about people on a terror watch list or the no-fly list. And, Jim, do you know what the difference is? Because I can't figure it out.
But just on a prior point, and I'll get to that, the Attorney General guidelines, Judge, those are really the guidelines that find their way down to the FBI and how the modus operandi and how things work. The no-fly list is a real mess. It always was. It was a mess when I was in. And there's all kinds of people on there that shouldn't be on there. There's all kinds of people on there with no rationale for being on there. Once you get on there, you can't get off. There's legend about people having their divorced wives put on there. I mean, all crazy stuff. Teddy Kennedy was on there. There was a 2-year-old baby on there, and it's a big problem. It's a mess, and that's why people don't want to have that as any kind of a barometer.
Jim, so then why would Comey drop this guy from whatever list he was on, and then he comes out and says, well, we don't want to stop them from buying a gun either. And of course, the White House, typical in the Comey White House, apparently bad blood, as I sense it, and I've said it before, comes out and says, oh yeah, we shouldn't allow them to buy a gun. It's no excuse that you've got a terror investigation going on.
Well, I don't know. That whole thing sounds crazy to me. And, it's probably the terrorist watch list the FBI maintains that they were taking off of. And I'll guarantee you that's because of this AG guidelines and how these things work. And, the agents can't lean forward very much, Jeanine, in this politically correct world we're in.
Well, why would they remove words like Sharia and jihad?
Because they're fixated on this issue we just spoke about. They're fixated, and I don't know why. I mean, we've got a fifth column in the government. We've got a fifth column in the news media. We've got a fifth column on the college campuses, the professors. I mean, we got real problems, Jeanine.
Well, I know we do. And the thing that bothers me, Jim, is this whole idea of you've got the no-fly list, then you've got known and suspected terrorists, and that's a group that's apparently on some terror screening database, and last estimate is 1.1 million people.
Oh, I could be wrong, but I don't think that's the terrorist watch list. I think the no-fly list we're probably mixing up the two. The no-fly list is a big problem. I think there's a lot more control over the terrorist watch list.
All right. So, Jim, what should happen now? Is this about terrorism? Is this about guns? Is this about the FBI, not being able to connect the dots? What is going on?
It's a combination of all these things. I mean, the Democrats go immediately to guns because they don't want to talk about the things we just talked about. They don't want to talk about radical fundamentalist Islamic terrorists. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the fact the immigrants are coming to the country. We don't have a clue who any of them are. They don't want to talk about the wide open border.
What's interesting, Jim, real fast. What's interesting is everybody wants a background check on anyone who wants to buy a gun, but we don't have the ability to do background checks on the Syrian refugees who are coming in. Jim Comey himself says we have no database, we can't do anything, and we can query them till the cows come home. So
right. I know.
we can't vet the refugees, but we have to vet the Americans buying guns. And by the way, my open makes it clear some of these people should not be able to get guns, and I'm a big Second Amendment person. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Sharia, as you well know, is not consistent with our Constitution.
Oh, of course not. Jim Kallstrom, thanks so much for being with us. All
Thank
right.
you,
According to new reports, federal authorities have received surveillance video from inside the Pulse nightclub that shows shooter Omar Mateen firing his assault rifle, as they call it, and systematically killing his innocent victims. Joining me now is Muslim scholar and author Dr. Kanta Ahmed. All right. Thanks for being with us tonight. Let me first put one issue aside, and that is, you got, as I understand it, there are 56 countries that have a Muslim majority. 37 ban homosexuality, 10 punish it by death. So, do we know if this guy is someone who is gay? Did we figure that out yet, or no?
I mean, we can only go based on how it's been reported in the media, but certainly his practices would indicate someone that had covert gay lifestyle of some kind. Perhaps he was exploring it. But I think certainly under all those environments you've described, he would be identified as gay.
Okay,
sure.
and so he knows that according to his religion and most countries that are majority, I mean, this is just wrong, period, end of the story. All right.
Categorically, it's a moral transgression in Islam to practice homosexual practices. There's no dispute about that anywhere.
Okay, let's now talk about Noor, the wife. First wife, we know he was beating her. She gets a divorce. Second wife, previously divorced, that he marries. I remember reading that she hadn't visited her family in years and only visited when her father died, only came to her father's funeral.
I noticed that too, and I thought that's remarkable, as she had a son who was about 3 years old, and why would she not be able to see the grandparents regularly to enjoy the male grandson?
But what does that tell you?
I think that she may well have been isolated or controlled by him, impecunious, not being able to buy her own plane ticket, not allowed, a controlled woman. Okay,
so I've worked with battered women, I get it, are they controlled? But there's so much, doctor, that jumps out at me that it contradicts that. Number one, apparently he gave her access to bank accounts right before the shooting. He added her to his life insurance policy. She bought ammunition, or was with him when he bought ammunition. They were in contact during the fight, and she's texting him, "I love you, I tried to call you."
And she drove him to the gay club, which was bizarre. I mean, the whole thing troubles me. In the last few days, these details would indicate she was aware of something developing. She was certainly aware of the changing financial circumstances in their marriage. Some reports have published that she was given lavish amounts of jewelry by her husband, who was not a high earner, immediately prior.
What does that tell you? Where would he be getting that money?
It's really, I don't know to what extent the jewelry was, how expensive it was, but it would be out of character. There was no occasion, and it surely should have been for some peculiar reason. Perhaps he knew he was saying goodbye. Perhaps this was a bribe to keep her quiet.
But if she knew this thing was going on at the time, we know that she did not call law enforcement and say, "My husband's in there." So isn't that enough? I mean, look, if the guy's in there, she's not under his control at that point.
I totally agree with that. And in fact, I would say if she had any knowledge of this, she should be arraigned and prosecuted to the most severe degree. Not only has she failed by the standards of being an American citizen, but she's utterly failed being a Muslim, which demands that you turn in even your parents, your husband, yourself, if you violate something that could endanger all of society.
Okay, and very quickly, you made a comment earlier about her ring.
Yes, I was troubled. I saw a picture of her in a car leaving in front of the press, and she was still wearing a fiery diamond ring, an engagement ring, which made me think, if one's husband had just committed mass murder, would you not want to destroy all symbols of your marriage to him? Maybe that was the expensive jewelry he'd bought her, but it was peculiar to notice.
All right, Dr. Kanta Ahmed, thanks so much for being with us. All right, Donald Trump slips in the polls. Lee Carter is here, and we'll take a closer look at the new numbers out this week. And next, I'm joined live by national spokesperson for the Donald Trump campaign, Katrina Pearson. Justice is back in a moment.